Night descended over Azular like a silent curtain, settling between rooftops and narrow alleyways. The city lay still, breathing a cold mist that clung to the stone streets. Faint lantern lights trembled against the walls, making the shadows stretch and shiver. Azular had not always been this quiet. Once it was a city known for its scholars, its markets, and its endless stories. Now it seemed to bear the weight of something forgotten, something that pressed beneath the surface and refused to die. In the heart of the city stood the Grand Library, an ancient structure of carved stone and towering windows. From the outside, it looked almost alive, as though it had grown from the earth rather than been built by human hands. Inside, the air was cold and heavy with the scent of dust and parchment. Shelves rose like the ribs of a giant beast, holding scrolls, manuscripts, and books so old that the ink had nearly faded into nothing. At a wooden table illuminated by a single candle sat Lian. Her quill scratched lightly against worn parchment as she copied the words of a fragile manuscript. Her face was calm, but her eyes carried a quiet intensity, a curiosity that never fully slept. She had lived in the library for as long as she could remember. For her, knowledge was a refuge, but also a prison she did not fully understand. Master Arman, the caretaker of the library, appeared between the shelves, his footsteps soft and measured. His robe brushed the floor as he walked, and the candlelight revealed lines of age etched into his face. He paused beside Lian, watching her work with a mixture of pride and concern. "You are still awake," he said in a quiet voice. "Even the pages need rest at this hour." Lian offered a faint smile. "I just want to finish this section." Arman nodded, though his gaze lingered on her for a moment longer. It was a look of protection, mixed with a truth he had never spoken aloud. He turned as if to leave, but noticed where her eyes drifted, toward the highest shelf in the far corner. His expression tightened. "Do not approach that section," he said, more sharply now. "Some books were sealed long before you were born. Their knowledge is not meant for unprepared minds." Lian lowered her gaze, murmuring an apology, but a quiet pull had already taken root in her chest. Something inside her had noticed the faint glimmer of black leather on that distant shelf. Something inside her wanted to understand why it was forbidden. Arman sighed, softening again. "Finish your work, then put out the candles and rest. The night carries strange winds." He walked away, climbing the narrow stairs to his chamber above. Left alone, Lian tried to return her attention to the manuscript, but the silence grew heavier. The flame of her candle flickered even without a draft, as if reacting to her wandering thoughts. She tried to ignore the feeling building within her, a tension that tugged at her like a whisper just out of reach. Finally, she set down her quill. She looked toward the forbidden corner again. The shadows there seemed deeper than before. Lian stood slowly, the sound of her chair scraping lightly across the stone floor. The library felt larger somehow, as though the silence had expanded to fill every corner. She took one step, then another. The air grew colder with each pace toward the far shelf. Her heartbeat quickened in her chest, yet she felt unable to turn back. Reaching the shelf, she hesitated. Her breath fogged in the cold air, something that should not have been possible indoors. Her fingers hovered near the black book. Its cover appeared worn, yet its color was too dark, as though the leather had swallowed every trace of light. She touched it. A jolt ran through her arm. She gasped, but the sensation passed quickly, leaving behind a strange warmth beneath her skin. She wrapped her hand around the spine, drew the book from the shelf, and held it against her chest as if it weighed far more than its size suggested. Back at the table, she placed it gently on the surface. The candle flickered violently, then steadied. She swallowed her fear and opened the book. The pages were filled with unfamiliar symbols at first glance, but as she stared at them, they shifted, reshaping into words she suddenly understood. It felt like the book was not written in any language but in thought itself, whispering meaning directly into her mind. She read the first line aloud, though her voice trembled. "The throne of shadows awaits its heir. Blood is the key." She blinked, uncertain whether she had truly spoken the words. They echoed faintly in her mind, repeating themselves as though they wished to be remembered. Then the candle went out. Every flame in the library died at the same instant, plunging the room into complete darkness. Lian froze. Her breath caught in her throat. She could not see even the outline of her hands. The silence that followed was impossibly deep, as if the world had inhaled and forgotten how to exhale. A faint hum rose in the air. It was soft at first, almost like the whisper of wind between pages. But it grew steadily until it became a layered chorus of murmuring voices surrounding her from every direction. Her pulse hammered against her skin. The voices grew more distinct, though their words were not yet clear. They pressed at the edges of her mind like distant memories trying to return. She backed away from the table, tripping over her own steps, but the voices followed her. She covered her ears, yet the sound continued, vibrating inside her skull instead of around her. She tried to speak, to call out to Arman, but no sound came from her throat. The darkness thickened. The whispers did not fade gently. They cut off all at once, as if 1,000 unseen mouths snapped shut in perfect unison. The sudden silence was overwhelming. Lian stood frozen in the darkness, her breathing loud and uneven in her own ears. The library, the endless aisles, the towering shelves, the table behind her, no longer felt like a room she knew. It felt like a hollow world suspended in the void, waiting for something to arrive. She tried to steady her breathing. She tried to tell herself that this was just fear, that her mind was playing tricks on her in the absence of light. But then the air shifted again, an invisible movement that carried a strange and ancient weight. It was as if something enormous had taken a breath somewhere beyond the walls. The darkness seemed to thicken around her ankles, climbing slowly like a tide rising from the floor. Then she heard it, a low vibration, so deep it felt more like the tremor of her own heartbeat than a sound. It rose through her chest into her spine and finally reached her ears as a whisper that was not a whisper at all. Lian. Her name, spoken softly but with a clarity that pierced the darkness like an arrow. She did not hear it with her ears. She felt it inside her skull as though her bones themselves carried the sound. She staggered backward, hitting the edge of a bookshelf. Dust fell onto her shoulders, but she barely felt it. Her mind raced in circles, desperately searching for an explanation, for something that made sense. She wanted to call for Arman, but when she opened her mouth, no voice came out. Her throat tightened painfully. The darkness pressed closer, brushing her skin like cold fingers. Then the voice returned, deeper this time, layered with echoes that made it impossible to tell whether it came from one being or many. "Your blood is the key." The words seemed to ripple outward, disturbing the air around her. Lian's legs weakened. She grabbed a shelf to steady herself, but her hand slipped on the smooth wood. She forced herself to turn toward the table where she had left the book. Even in the pitch-black room, she sensed its presence, like a heartbeat pulsing in the shadows. A faint glow emerged from the direction of the table. At first, it was barely noticeable, a pale thread of blue light leaking between the pages of the book. It grew slowly, illuminating the surrounding shelves with a dim, eerie radiance. The light crawled up the walls and across the ceiling, revealing the outlines of the library in distorted shapes. The shadows bent unnaturally, stretching and twisting as if something moved behind them. Her pulse pounded against her skin. She wanted to run, but her body would not obey. Every instinct screamed at her to escape, yet she remained rooted in place, drawn to the growing light as though it held an answer she had been seeking all her life. The whispers returned, not as chaotic murmurs, but as distant, rhythmic patterns, like a ritual chant spoken from far below the earth. Their tone carried a strange mixture of urgency and reverence, as though they addressed someone of immense importance. Lian knew, without understanding how, that they were speaking to her. The light from the book intensified, glowing brighter and brighter, until it washed over the floor like a pool of pale fire. The symbols on the pages shifted and rearranged, moving like living ink. Her vision blurred for a moment, and in the glow she thought she saw shapes. Silhouettes of figures standing at the edges of the room, unmoving, watching. She blinked hard, but the figures vanished as quickly as they appeared. Her breath came in rapid, shallow bursts. She felt heat rising beneath her skin, flowing up her arms into her chest. It was a warmth she had never felt before, unfamiliar yet strangely comforting, as if it recognized her even if she did not recognize it. Her fingertips tingled, and for a moment she feared they might ignite with the same blue glow that radiated from the book. The voice returned a final time, each word echoing like an ancient decree sealed in stone. You cannot run from what you carry. The floor beneath her vibrated as if the stone itself responded to the voice. The glow flared violently, flooding the library with a blinding burst of blue-white light. Lian cried out, raising her arms to shield her face, but the light pierced through her closed eyes, burning into her vision. A soundless shockwave spread outward. The air around her trembled. Her legs gave out, and she fell to her knees, her palms hitting the floor. The stone felt warm beneath her touch, as though fire coursed just below the surface. She gasped, the world spinning around her in a dizzying rush. Then, as abruptly as it began, the light vanished. Complete darkness returned. The library fell still, as if nothing had happened at all. No whisper, no vibration, not even the faint crackle of a candle. Only one thing remained. A faint echo of the voice repeating inside her skull, soft but unbreakable. Your blood is the key. Everything faded to black,